And welcome to History Around Us, Dudley Castle. This video is a quick overview of what the exam paper will actually look like and how you should answer the questions. This paper does not have the technicalities that the others do, so this will be a very straightforward explanation for how to answer the questions, but I will show you all of the past questions that have appeared on previous papers, and please feel free to attempt these as part of your revision prior to completing your exam. How the exam will actually look, you can see on screen just a screenshot of a past paper. So you will be given 3 questions. They will all have additional marks for spelling, punctuation, grammar and the use of specialist terminology, as you can see. And I'm going to talk you through now how you unpick the paper. So first of all, the exam paper that is given to you will also be sent to all of the schools around the country, and therefore the questions will not ask you directly about Dudley Castle because other schools will have studied different sites local to them. But Dudley Castle is the site that you have studied, and therefore you will need to write this at the start of each response. You can see on screen in the bottom right hand corner how the answer sheet will look, and you will need to write Dudley Castle where it asks you to state the site that you have studied, and then you will need to write the question number you have selected. You'll be answering 2 of the 3 question choices available, and you will answer those with peel paragraphs. Points, evidence, explanation and linking back to the question using words from it. It's worth stating here that you must include physical features in every paragraph you write for this paper, and this will allow you to move up the mark scheme. This physical feature, or physical features, sorry, should form your evidence in each of your paragraphs. So the second E in that peel. Without this, you will really limit your marks. So you must ensure that you include physical features as part of your peel paragraph. Please also be aware that if a question states during a particular time, you can see on screen the question is choose a significant turning point in your past history. You are only being asked to speak about one time period or one turning point. So please make sure that you break that question down, take a highlighter into the exam, and if you see the word A, as much as it is extremely small, it is extremely significant in terms of the question. So please be aware of that and have a look for it. As I also stated at the start of this slide, there will be an additional 10 marks on this paper for spelling, punctuation and grammar and the use of specialist terminology. I am well aware that some of you struggle with your spellings, but there is no excuse, for example, for writing Dudley Castle with a lowercase d. That is why where in the bottom right hand corner I've typed Dudley Castle, I've put the capital D in red. Okay, please do not let the examiner's first impression of you on this paper be somebody that can't be bothered to use a capital D for your site. So please ensure that that's the case. And for the rest of the words, really give your specialist terminology a go. So if you spelt crenellate wrong, for example, but you've given it a go and you've used it in the right context, you will get credit for that. So it's really important to just do your best. So just a reminder that OCR can ask you questions relating to any of the categories outlined on the screen. All of these are going to be covered in the revision videos for Dudley Castle that I will be making, and they've also been covered with you in class, but it is worth running through them now. So you need to be familiar with the reasons for the location of Dudley Castle within its surroundings. So why was Dudley chosen? When and why people first created Dudley Castle? The ways in which Dudley Castle has changed over time, how Dudley Castle has been used throughout its history, what kind of diversity in terms of people and activities have been associated with Dudley Castle through the ages, the reasons for changes to Dudley Castle and the way it was used, significant times in Dudley Castle's past, including peak activity, major developments and turning points, the significance of specific features in the physical remains at Dudley Castle, the importance of Dudley Castle either locally or nationally, the typicality of Dudley Castle based on a comparison with other similar sites, and remember we will be comparing Dudley to Shrewsbury and Kenilworth Castle, what Dudley Castle reveals about everyday life, attitudes and values during particular periods of its history, how the physical remains may prompt questions about the past, and how historians will frame these as valid historical inquiries, how the physical remains at Dudley Castle can inform artistic reconstructions and other interpretations of the site, and finally, the challenges and benefits of studying Dudley Castle. So on the next few slides, I'm just going to run through with you the past questions that we have for the History Around Us paper. Please feel free to plan answers to these questions and speak to your teachers about how you would answer them if you are unsure. The first question on screen, the development of the site over time has made it impossible for historians to understand when and why people first created it. How far is this true for your site? You have to use physical features, as we've said, in every single question. So this is a question that is rooted in the medieval period because it is when and why people first created Dudley Castle. Question 2, explain why the physical features of your site have changed over time. So this isn't asking you to stick with one time period, it's asking you to think about the physical features of your site throughout its history. So you would have a big scope here, much more of a wide focus than the first question that you can see. And then question 3, choose one period in the history of your site. How far was your site typical of its type at this time? So this is a question that narrows your focus. They're asking you to look at one time period in Dudley Castle's history, and it's asking about typicality. So again, you would need to think here about Shrewsbury Castle and about Kenilworth Castle. Questions that you can see on screen. The first one, why did people first start using your site? So again, a question that is rooted very much in the medieval period. So this is why was Dudley selected? So you'd need to think about the reasons for why this would be a good place for a Motte and Bailey castle. Choose a significant turning point in your site's past. How far did this change the site, its people, or its uses? Again, this question is asking you to pick a significant turning point. So please make sure that it's just one that you select and you explain that fully in 3 peel paragraphs. And finally, the third question, how far can historians use the physical remains at your site to tell the story of the site or its people? So this is thinking about what we can see at Dudley Castle today and how this enables us to tell a story of Dudley Castle's past. So the next set of questions start with how far have the uses of your site changed throughout its history? So this is a broad focused question. You can speak about multiple time periods here, and the exam board are looking for you to explain how Dudley Castle has changed over time. Question 2, explain why your site was important nationally and or locally, and they've helpfully said here you can focus on one period or several periods in the history of the site, so it would be completely up to you. You obviously have a broader scope if you speak about more than one. And finally, question 3, how far does your site enable historians to understand the everyday life and attitudes of people who lived there? Again, this doesn't narrow you to one time period, so you would be able to speak about multiple. So the final set of questions that we have start with question 1. Your site wants reconstruction drawings to show what your site looked like at a particular time in its past. Explain what you would tell an artist to include in the drawings. This feels like quite an unusual question, but all that they are asking you here is to describe physical features that would enable somebody to understand how Dudley Castle was used through the physical features that were there at the time. It's worth noting here that the question asks you for a particular time in its past. So if you were going to speak, for example, about Dudley Castle during the development of the Sharrington Range, that is what you would need to limit all 3 of your paragraphs to. You could not mix that with an explanation of medieval and the castle's construction, for example. So please watch out for that word a, okay? So in this instance, it's a particular time in its past. Question 2, how far does your site tell us about important local or national changes? Use physical features of the site as in all of the others. So this can be during any time period. It doesn't have to be limited to one. And finally, how far have activities on your site differed over time? Quite a nice question, nice and broad. There's loads of differing activities throughout Dudley Castle's history, obviously ending up with the use of it as a zoo, which I know that all of us could speak about confidently. So they are all of the past questions that we've had for history around us, and I've tried to explain briefly how they can relate to Dudley Castle. Please feel free now to watch the videos that are relating to the different content for each of the time periods of Dudley Castle's past to help you prior to the exam to plan out what you would say for each type of question.